Okay, we've got a pretty full agenda.
Yes, we
actually,
do.
and interesting stuff.
Mhm.
Are there any additions or deletions that anyone would like to make to the agenda? The only thing that I would like to talk about is whether we want to continue to do the hybrid thing, or do we want to go all Zoom? We're now permitted to do
Yeah, I
that.
saw Duncan's email.
The legislature is allowing, and the governor is allowing us to go all hybrid if we want to. Does anybody have any feeling about that? I mean, this has worked pretty well.
I'm liking really being able to see people myself, but
Okay, and you know, I think we talked about that when we hired the architects, that there's some value in actually meeting in
Yeah.
person with the architects.
Case in point, Kevin.
I think we
Having a
should
huge
keep
impact
that.
on his night. He's able to.
yeah, I think
I think we should keep the hybrid option though, because it is nice to allow people to join who maybe can't get into the
Yeah.
town center. It
Right.
gives people I think we get, more
bad
input.
weather.
Okay,
I second that.
okay,
Uh-huh.
so let's
Okay.
just continue as we've been going.
Okay,
Okay, so I don't see any public other than who we are. I think we count as part of the public, but we can talk anytime.
oh, John's on. too.
So the first up on the agenda is the elevation
Yeah.
survey. So Kevin, I guess you're up. Unless Andrew, you wanted to do this.
Good
Kevin
evening.
doesn't need introduction. He's got it.
Sure. So we did receive the survey from Latitudes Surveying last week. We've begun to delve into it and understand it. And the short summary is that there are no surprises in it. Some of our earlier recommendations still stand. So I can recap, since it's been a little bit since I've met with you at least. I don't know how much you've been talking about flood measures in my absence, but
Yeah, we've delayed talking about that until we heard back from you.
yeah, good. All right. So based on conversations, just summarizing my conversations with Andrew to refresh, we are, as you know, the site is in the floodplain, and I can share exhibits if that's helpful, or I can just speak to the topics. What's best? Shall I share?
Yeah, if you can.
Sure.
Sure.
Sure. Okay, great. You should be able to see my screen now.
Yep.
And this looks a little different than the maps we've looked at in the past, because the maps we looked at in the past were Vermont GIS data, which takes FEMA data and puts it on their own layers, but really the kind of final word is the FEMA data. So that's what this is. Our site is right here. The blue line and the blue dots represents the 1% chance of flooding, which is what we call the 100-year flood event, and the black line and the black dots represent an extended flood zone, which is the 0.2% chance of flooding, which is what we call the 500-year flood. It's really grainy and hard to see, but here's the library building, outside of the 500-year flood. Here's the historic school building, the town building here, and then white, it's kind of blending in with the parking, is the post office addition in the back.
Okay.
So the flood elevations are determined in two ways. One, you can see this squiggly line, and that's the line which goes across the full width of the flood zone, and it tells you at that zone, FEMA has calculated the 1% or 100-year flood is at elevation 311. You can see further up the river, it's 312, and then further down, it's 310. But more importantly, more accurately, is this solid line with a letter at the end, BO, and that is a flood profile line that FEMA generated. And this one happens to go right through the post office, or actually kind of the notch between the post office building and the historic school building. So now I'll switch over to that profile, which is, this is the profile of the river. You can see the river bottom is sloping from right to left. The flood elevations are sloping from right to left. If I zoom in here, you can see the BO, and that's this elevation of that line we talked about. This represents Bridge Street, just down the road a little bit. And the 100-year flood is at 311.3, which is what we've known and what we've been using. And the 500-year flood is at 314.9. So the results of the survey, and sorry, I have it in this kind of CAD format, basically show that the post office is at, so the key number here is 311.3. Need you to remember that number. And as we come in the front door of the post office, it's at 312.35, and that's the elevation of the carpet right in the entry. And your zoning requirements and the FEMA's requirements for a building of this type is that it be the slab be elevated 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So this is 1 foot 1.05 feet above the flood elevation. So it appears someone may have done their homework when they designed and built the post office building. There's another grade inside the building. This front door here. Nope, sorry. This door
I imagine
here.
those elevations were different when the post office was built in
Yeah, I bet.
1960.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the flood elevations were different. The datum was different. We're using a datum of 1988 here for both the flood mapping and the survey. So yes, who knows if anyone did their homework when the post office was built, or they just got lucky in this case. There's a elevation on the concrete at the entry here, which is 312.12. That's slightly less than 1 foot above. And there's a sill at the back here that's also at 312.15, also less than 1 foot. So not having walked through the post office, it seems to be that there's a couple inch difference of the slab versus the where the main entry is and this back area. So
Well, that
John and Andrew,
whole
I think
area used to be the elementary section, grades 1 through 4.
okay. Interesting.
So it was put in a long time before it was a post office.
Okay. Oh, neat. Interesting. So it was converted over to the post office use.
Yeah, when was that, Linda? That was in 1990s, was it? I think.
I'd say so.
So the summary is for the post office addition. I think our original determination was that the slab would need to be raised to the, or dry proofed or raised to the 312.3 elevation. So that could consist of a couple inch topping slab. And there's some below slab equipment chases, mechanical chases that should be filled in order to meet the dry flood proof requirements. And then, as we know, the basement of the original building is well below the flood elevation, and therefore would be addressed by having it be wet flood proof, which is to allow the water in and allow the water to leave. That's a little bit complicated by the fact that all the grades around the perimeter of the building are above the flood elevation. So we have to discuss that with state floodplain manager about how best to address that. And
So
then the use, sorry, just final thing, the use in that space would also be just for storage.
Is it fair to say, Kevin, that the bottom line is that we can use the building? We might have to do a little bit of adjustment to, I think it's is it the loading dock is where the issue is most pronounced? But if we fill the loading dock with a couple of inches or so, then we get out of that situation and flood proof the rest of the building. Wet flood proof the rest of the building.
Yep. Yeah, wet flood proofing consists of, for the basement of the rest of the building, consists of removing any rot susceptible materials. So wood, sheetrock up to the flood elevation, letting water in and out, which again, that will be a challenge. And And then the use can be really limited to storage, so no occupancy of the basement.
So no wood below 311?
0.3.
Is that right?
Yep.
Hmm.
So like, what about for like shelving? Is that an issue? So like, I mean, what we're intending to use it for, the basement is for storage.
Yeah, you can only use rot susceptible materials,
Yeah, go to
concrete, metal, maybe some, probably
Yeah.
any, wood, synthetic wood materials,
Oh,
composites.
Give my coming in sort of late into the conversation
No.
here, but why do we have to do this? What is the have to piece here? What is the,
FEMA.
Yeah, great question.
what if we don't do it?
Okay, what happens,
Can they
Kevin?
arrest us all? What happens?
The trigger for having to do this is making what's called a substantial improvement, and that's a capital S, capital I to the building, which is a improvement in the facility equal to 50% or more of the current value of the building.
Mhm.
So if the building is valued right now at, I don't know, $1 million, and you put in $500,000 or more, you're triggering a substantial improvement. The reason that you need to follow the rules is the federal government has a program called the National Flood Protection Program, and that's the program that provides flood insurance to municipalities. And as a municipality, you are, in order to continue to get flood insurance for your municipality, which is not just the town buildings, but all the private residences, you have a flood hazard management section in your zoning ordinances that you have to enforce. And not enforcing that subjects the municipality to potentially losing your flood insurance for the entire municipality.
We would not be eligible for any federal grants or state grants.
Okay.
If we didn't do it correctly.
Compelling, yep.
On top of that.
Yeah.
So this is pretty much what we anticipated, I think. And what we've been looking at are the top two floors. And whether or not there's enough space in the top two floors for the town services that we have and we want.
Mhm.
And so what does this mean for Andrew? Or Kevin, I'm sorry, you're Andrew, right? Kevin, what does this mean from the standpoint of the primary building? And particularly, I'm concerned about the wood framing for the first floor. Is that above that?
It is. So
Yeah.
the first floor is above this. It's if you think about the profile of the building, the windows
Right.
or, the basement windows are about that elevation. So it's everything below that.
Yeah, the sills of the windows are at roughly 312.3, so they're also about a foot above the flood elevation. The
Mhm.
first floor is at elevation 318, so it's about almost 7 feet above. So the wood framing of the first floor is well above. I haven't been in the basement, so I don't know what your columns are and any kind of sheathing walls inside the stone and brick foundation. I can't speak to that, but I know our structural engineers have looked at that.
A lot of wood down there, but I don't know what the
I don't
supports
know.
are.
There are a lot of partition walls too.
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't mention but should is no mechanical equipment below that flood elevation.
There is right now, but that
That would.
So Kevin, can you guys hear me? This is John.
Hey, John,
Hey, hello, everybody.
we can hear
So
you, but we don't see you.
I know, I don't know why that is because my video is on and I can press the button that says stop video, but I'm not sure what I'd be
If
stopping.
you're on a laptop, you might have a little slider over your camera.
Mm,
So you can,
uh,
those are starting to put those in the laptops these days.
No,
anyway.
it's not that new. In
Yeah.
any event, I'm here and I'm listening. Not that it matters at this moment, but the rot resistant construction, is that from elevation 311.3 or 312.3?
I need to look at the town's ordinance to
Right.
answer that question.
I mean, we may be taking the columns, for example, that are holding up that floor and pouring a new pier and putting, and cutting off the timber post so that it's above that elevation. But the good news is we don't have to change any of the floor framing
Right.
for sure. So,
Yeah,
Most of your
That's
bearing
true.
walls are masonry too.
yeah.
That's good news.
Good.
right, so
So
I
the-
think you can take out a lot of the partitions down there. Might make more sense anyway.
What about the stairs?
They would have to be metal.
They probably have to be, would probably have to do
Probably
steel down
Steel stairs, probably.
something, I don't know.
Concrete and
So this
steel.
is, put this on your list, I guess. huh?
So yeah, this is this
Yeah.
level of detail that will come for sure.
Okay.
I
So-
do want to point out that there are some exceptions allowed for historic or structures that are on the historic registry. And it's been a bit since I looked through all my notes on those, what those exceptions might be or variances that are allowed. So we should
Okay.
certainly investigate those. What I'm telling you is pretty kind of cut rate, straight up, FEMA regulations, but there are some exceptions for.
And so
historic
Kevin,
structures.
this building is on the state registry, but not on the national registry.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the nuances as to whether it's on the registry or eligible.
It's
I think it has to be on it.
It's eligible for the national, it's on the state registry as part of the Richmond Historic District.
Mhm.
I can send you all that if you want to see how it's written. So I have a letter
In a
from the
contributing
state.
district, adds to the contributing structure on the state registry. Yeah, that's.
Mhm.
Okay, so any other questions for Kevin?
We might, Kevin, while you're here, we might as well just talk. So we're gonna start diving into the implications of what an addition looks like. And one of the bullet points that we came up with is an addition on grade and plane with the existing post office then is feasible. The caveat to that, which is going to become a talking point, is depending on the classification of that addition, i.e. if it's a police station that is a emergency structure, that would trigger, Kevin, for the elevation of that struct to be in response to the 500-year, not the 100-year, correct?
Yeah, so there's a few considerations for any kind of addition. The first is any addition that's within the floodplain would need to be raised above the floodplain. And when you do that, you're filling in the floodplain. And by filling in the floodplain, unless of course it's a building up on stilts, which I don't think we're proposing here. And when you fill in the floodplain, you're occupying some of the volume of the floodplain that's available for flooding. So you need to provide what's called compensatory storage. So you have to kind of lower the grade nearby somewhere else in the same floodplain to provide as much flood storage so that you're not impacting downstream neighbors, even as
Through the
small as the
parking lot
building.
or something like that.
That's right, Jeff. Yep. Yep. And then to Andrew's point, a basic building use like the post office or school or something would need to be elevated 1 foot above the 100 year. So that same 312.3 foot elevation. But certain uses, like possibly the police department, depending on how it's classified in a ordinance, a national code we would look at with Andrew and John, may need to have be built at a higher elevation. So as Andrew mentioned, the 500-year flood. An example of that is in Waterbury. We did the campus state office building restoration renovation project, and the Department of Public Service there is elevated above the 500-year floodplain because it's a emergency response facility.
Mhm.
Okay. We can,
If we looked at the chart that you had earlier, do you know approximately how much higher the 500 here level?
Yeah,
is than the 100?
it's 3.6 feet higher. It's 314.9.
Yep. Thank you.
Mhm.
okay, so it sounds to me like details for the architects to figure out.
Sure.
You really don't want us figuring it out. How
No,
about that?
you're right. You're absolutely right.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Kevin while we got him here?
No,
Okay. Okay, the next item, I see we have Chief Herrick here. Hi, Ben. The next step is to talk about your impressions and what you feel you need. Andrea, are you going to be able to kind of walk them through what we?
Sure, I can help guide that conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
And I guess to be clear, Kevin, I think you're all set and
Okay.
That's great.
You're
Thank you
welcome
all.
to stay and listen if you want. It's a public meeting.
Yeah, I may listen for a little bit. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
yeah, thanks.
It's just so everybody knows everybody, you know, Jake, you might be new to some of these other people. You know, I happen to know everybody.
Yeah,
Sure.
Do you, have you folks met Jake?
I know, yeah, I was on the
But-
committee when Jake was
Okay.
more active.
Okay. And Christine, have you met Jake?
We met a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first joined the select board and you were really helpful with, I forget what project we were working on, but you.
I
Yeah,
don't know, I'm not sure I remember either, but,
Yeah.
I guess,
Amy Wardwell, I'm new,
okay.
newish.
Yeah, I work with the EIC Efficiency Vermont.
Oh, great.
I'm a career working with buildings. I was a building contractor with my own construction company before that. So, and then sort of moved into the energy space and building science. And I did that for number of years and still am there working with buildings. So, and Jeff and I have crossed paths a number of times through some of that work, and you sort of roped me into this early on when the committee first got formed. And then it seemed like we were spending a lot of time talking about who the tenants were going to be, and it
Yeah.
just was not my realm of expertise. I got 2 young kids, so I thought my time was better spent, trying to keep them in mind. So. But now it sounds like we're looped back around to talking about the building itself, which
Yeah.
is exciting and obviously tremendous opportunity. So
Yeah.
I'm back.
And Jake, this is Andrew McCullough. He's at
Hi.
Black River Design.
Nice to meet you.
The other player here is John Hemmelgarn from Black River Design as well.
Right.
Um,
And Jake, now I understand where I was recognizing you from, but
Okay.
I'm sure it's from something through VEIC, which I've been back and
Yeah,
forth with for years and years. So,
I've been with the EIC for 11 years, so
right. I bet I've seen you at the conference at more than once.
yeah, I'm sometimes known as the heat pump guy.
Exactly. That's it. Now it's all coming back to me. No,
Yeah.
So,
You do pretty well with advanced foot heat too.
I do a lot more than heat pumps, but I did start all the heat pump programs in the state and sort of kind of was. on
and
the
now
road.
that they're taking over, you can do something
Now I'm
else.
like,
Yeah.
let somebody else.
Good
carry the
job.
torch. Yeah.
Yeah, well done.
Well done.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
So what we have on the screen is floor plans from the Heinsberg Police Station. One of the things we did just for Jake's benefit and maybe Ben's is we did a site visit to Heinsberg with the feeling that Heinsberg is a similar sized town. They have a similar size police department. They just built a relatively new police station, 2014, I think it was. And I found it really helpful to see what you need and, how do you use a police station with a department the size that we have. Chief Cambridge was gracious enough to give me the plans, which I handed over to Andrew so we've got a relatively accurate floor plan just to get a sense of what comparing apples to apples. How does that kind of space fits within this kind of space?
Mhm.
That a fair description, you think?
Mhm.
Okay. So we wanted to show this to you, Ben. I'm assuming you've been to the Heinsberg Police Station. Have you been to the Heinsberg Police Station, Ben?
I have. I've been through the building.
Mhm.
So, my question is like, it looked good to me, but what do I know, is there some things that you liked or things that you would change from their police station? And Andrew, do you want to take it from
I
there?
think we should probably catch Ben up a little bit because so John and I met with Ben pretty early on after this process started, and just to hear kind of his summary of their express needs. Then we took that information and put it into an Excel file that we used to kind of evaluate what existing space there is and what the express need is, and kind of align that with what the existing building has to offer as far as square footage goes. And the short answer is we kind of showed to the committee that you are significantly short on space. Find that there are certainly options depending on what is a must-have and what is a kind of a wish list item. I think where we got hung up a little bit was maybe, and this is why we went to Heinsberg, was in going through that program, there were a lot of questions back and forth in terms of, well, why do we need that? How does this function? How does a police officer show up on site, go into a processing room? How do they interact with the spaces safely, securely? How do they have space to work? How is that separated? All these kind of nitty gritty questions. And the easiest way to kind of walk through that was to go visit this comparable police department so that we could actually show a comparable space and hear about how it's used. And so then therefore have a kind of a more clear context to what we're suggesting for the police department to Richmond. But the ultimate question is, what do you guys actually need? And so that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
That was a brief enough summary, but still being clear. Is that?
Did Ben get to see the outline that I had done?
I
from
read
our
that. Yeah, it was
walkthrough?
really great. Thank you for doing that.
I don't know. Ben, have you seen? So yeah, this committee has actually done quite a bit of work on over the years. One of the things that Lori did is she did a summary of our site visit and kind of outlined what we saw.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
I didn't bring my copy. I just had it broken down and into I'm just thinking we might want to do the same entryway, processing room, Sally Port, officers, workspace. We had the broad categories, Ben.
Yep. Yeah, what we should have and what we would like to have and what we have to have are kind of three different categories. But I know I've heard Jeff talk about the fact that he didn't realize that police departments had an armory. We don't. We have a green locker with a lock on it that's in the corner of a room. An armory would be great. We really, another thing we don't have that we should is a room that is just for evidence. What we have is a room that has evidence in it, as well as the drugs that come in the drug box that have to be disposed of, and extra uniform items, and some just storage because there's no place else to put some things. And really the evidence room should have nothing in it but evidence, for a host of reasons. A locker room would be great. Heinsberg has a nice setup in way of that. I think Heinsberg's, what they have, I believe on their plan here labeled as their patrol area, is significantly under space. It's kind of right in the middle of the building where the red writing is there. That's where their patrol officers, right there. That's where their patrol officers do their work when they sit down to do paperwork and so forth. And it is directly in front of the window where somebody would come in to see somebody from the police department. And so if you're on the phone having a conversation and somebody's at that window, they're hearing everything you're saying. That area should be removed from view and earshot of the public. You know, the Sally Port is great. I think every police department should have a Sally Port. You should have a place to bring somebody in a car, close the door, and then get them out of the car where there's no, well, they're out of the view of the public, but there's also no chance of them jumping out of the car and running. You know, the processing area, a holding area that is purpose built for that. Right now, what we have is a oversized closet with a metal cot and a bar that we can handcuff people to, and it's just not, it's not safe. We don't use it because it's not safe. Again, the chief and sergeant's offices being right next to the front door. You know, if somebody comes in and is standing at that, in that lobby, they're hearing everything that's going on right there. So that, like, the entrance area and everybody else, it would be nice if there was a buffer between those things. They have, I don't remember what it's labeled as on this drawing here, and I can't seem to zoom in far enough to be able to see. But I would call it their, like, training and right there, training and conference room. That is a huge benefit to have. I would love to see Richmond have that. We also do have access to the room that you're sitting in right now, for those of you who are in person. You know, we have access to that room, so it's not like we're completely without. But that wouldn't, if there's going to be, I didn't know that anyone was looking at a true addition for the police department. So if that is the direction that this is going to go, that would be something that I would love to see.
And we've been talking, you know, that if a Sally Port is a processing, in Heinsberg, it's a big garage. But they are able to pull the car in, take the person out, close the garage door. It's a secure place, you know,
Right.
and then take them out and bring them into the building, you know, so that, you know, the public's not involved in any way, shape, or form. So far, that's what we've been talking about as an addition, maybe a little bit more than that, but we haven't talked, you know, a lot of
Haven't gotten
details
into
yet.
the design specifics.
Would
Okay.
the addition just be a Sally Port, or would be a whole police station?
No,
Yeah.
What we've been thinking about is, you know, you can't drive a car into this building in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So, what we've been thinking about is adding some so that you could drive a car into that and then connect it to this building.
Got it. Yeah.
Not a 4-car garage like they have in
Yeah,
Heinsberg.
You can see it's almost the same size. It's almost. as
Yeah,
big.
it does not at all need to be that big. A little bit of storage area in there for things that are, you know, the target stands we use when we go to the range, or, you know, things like that. That would be great, but it really doesn't need to be huge. Just big enough to get a car in there and have room. I've seen Sally Ports where, you know, it's like a single car garage with 2 feet of room on either side of the car. That's not conducive either. You need enough room to move around. You know, and deal with somebody who maybe doesn't want to get in or out of the car. But the Sally Port is really, I mean, it's not so often the person that is in the car, it's that you don't want other people. I've had more than once where I have brought somebody back to a police department, and when I pull in the parking lot, the victim's dad is there waiting, and that's not a good situation.
Mhm.
You know, or some family member is there waiting, and that if you can put a barrier between you and them, that's good.
Well, there's also privacy issues with people you're bringing in who may or may not eventually get charged or not charged.
Right.
You don't want people knowing who you're bringing in necessarily.
Okay,
Ben, can you talked to us about this a little bit. I think this would be helpful maybe just to reiterate a little bit, but can you talk a little bit about how you currently do that? And just, we're using the basis of the ideal layout, but based on what you currently have. And I think this tied in a little bit to if you were to have a reduced program that doesn't necessarily provide all these amenities in an ideal way, how you might be reliant on other departments and why that was problematic in your mind.
Okay, I was gonna say, currently we don't do that. That's that's kind of the issue. If we have somebody in custody that we have to actually like process, question, fingerprint, all that, get, potentially take them to jail and do all of the paperwork and so forth that goes into that. We have to go to either Williston Police Department or the Williston State Police Barracks. And both of those agencies have been wonderful as far as letting us do that. But I've had one situation where I had somebody in custody and they had to have a trooper leave a car accident to come back to the barracks to let me in, because it's not our office. We can't just have free run of the place. They have to have somebody, they have to have somebody there. So that takes one of their officers or troopers off of the road to essentially just sit there with us while we do what we need to do. And then add to that, that once I get to the state police barracks, I'm not at my office. I don't have my desktop computer. I have my laptop from the car. I don't have all of the things that I have in my office. I have the things that are, sorry, my kids just came home and my dog's going nuts. I have the things that that are in their office, the forms and the whatever paperwork that we're going to need access to. I'm going off of whatever the state police have or whatever I might happen to have in my trunk, and most of us carry those things with us. But it's much different to do it at somebody else's office than it is to do it at your own. Those processings are videotaped, and then we have to get somebody from Williston or from VSP involved in getting us those videos. Whereas if we were doing it in-house, then we have access to all that ourselves. It's just more streamlined to be able to do things, in-house. So the short answer to your question of how do we do it now with our building is we don't. We go somewhere else, and that takes us farther away and also ties up another agency.
So there are a couple of spaces that I was curious about, Ben. One is the kitchen. So do you feel like you need a kitchen within your space, or can you share a kitchen space with town staff, or is that, I don't know how that works.
I mean, we can share kitchen space with town staff if it's not we don't need a full-size refrigerator and a dishwasher and a stove and whatever. Right now we have a coffee pot and a microwave, and we do okay with that. So I don't think we necessarily need a full-size kitchen, but a room with a sink, and someplace where we can wash out our coffee cup or wash our plate and fork from dinner, wouldn't hurt.
Well, but so if there, and we don't have it's a really terrible kitchen setup downstairs. But if we had a kitchen set up on the first floor, or I guess even the second floor as a break room for, town staff, is that something you would use, or do you find that you wouldn't go out of the police part of the building? Would you be uncomfortable with that, or is it what?
I use the kitchen that the town had over by the town manager's office, that break room. I use that now.
Okay.
It's just usually at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, so nobody sees me, but yeah, I mean, if I have plates to wash from my dinner or something like that, I usually go over there and do it, because the other alternative for us right now, is for me to wash my dishes in that tiny little sink in our bathroom.
Yeah.
And I prefer not to do that with my dishes.
That's good to
So,
know. You know, we don't necessarily need 3 different kitchens in this building then. That's good to know.
Right.
And the locker room, I was impressed with the locker room in Heinsberg. Did you, and Jake, I'd be happy to take you over there for a field trip if you'd like. Do you feel that that's important? Is it adequate? Would a locker room of that size work for us? What's your impression of the locker room?
So I love the idea of a locker room, a locker room. I like the idea of being able to have a change of clothes there, and store some of my own stuff in there to be able to have access to, a place to change clothes if you need to.
Mhm.
They have a shower there. I would love to have access to a shower. There have been times where, things go bad and you end up at work for a double shift, and it's nice to be able to, or maybe not a double shift, but staying at work and then starting a second shift. It's nice to be able to get cleaned up.
I felt like decontamination
too was also,
decontamination might be
Yep.
important. Blood or, vomit. It's not just
Yep.
unpleasant, not safe.
Yep, that's what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
okay, and they had kind of impressive lockers. They didn't
They did have.
they didn't open them for us, but they what they said is that they had power in them.
Yep.
So they can recharge their handheld devices and stuff. And they also had a gun safe in it, which seemed like a cool idea as well. If you might not want to take your service revolver home, or something of that sort. Are those, that was the rationale that they gave us. Does that make any sense to you?
I would not leave my weapon at work. I go home in my uniform in a police car. I'm not going to leave my gun behind. But I suppose maybe somebody would choose to do that. Having a place to put it. I mean, if you have a locker that locks, just putting it in your locker while you're if you're going to take a shower or if you're going to whatever, that would be fine.
And I'm assuming that the architects can deal with the gender issues, so
Yeah.
The bathroom, shower rooms,
Yeah,
had a
the shower
door
room
on
and the
it.
bathroom of their own, they're gender neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
these days.
the funny thing that they had there is they had the shower in a separate place from the toilet.
Well, that I see. I totally
Huge though,
support, well,
but
they might
whatever,
have had to be ADA. And even
maybe.
though you wouldn't necessarily have a police officer in a wheelchair, but they probably have to be ADA accessible with the doors wide and the space for the wheelchair. And yeah, you could have an admin person using it that, Ben, I have a question about going back to the processing. So how often in a year do you process people and have to go to Williston and have to go do that? Just
I would say so when assuming we're at full staff,
Yep.
I would say at least once every 2 weeks,
Okay.
maybe sometimes more often than that.
Yeah. No, I was getting a sense of how much time you're talking about using
Couple dozen a year.
using other people's resources as well as your own. Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Yeah, that's kind of a hard question for me to answer because my entire time working for Richmond, I started just a couple weeks before COVID happened, and
Yeah.
everything got shut down. And we've been short-staffed ever since then. So I really don't know how the department functions when there's 5 officers and everything's going the way it's supposed to. Because I haven't seen that.
So Jake, just so you know, so we budget for 5 full-time officers, including a chief, and some part-time coverage. However, we haven't had that since 2018, for a variety of reasons. So we're down to 3 right now.
Questions for Ben. I want to make sure that.
Ben, one other question. What about holding cells? Is there anything like that in the?
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about. So right now, what we have is a room that's about, I don't know, 6 by 8. Roughly 6 by 8, that has a toilet and a sink and a metal cot that's bolted to the wall with a railing around it that we can handcuff somebody to, and there's a small counter where we can do fingerprints. So that little 6 by 8 room is our holding cell and our processing room. And we don't use it because it's just not safe. That's not a good way to do business. So that's what we have right now. Ideally, if there was going to be some renovations or something created, an actual processing room where, again, there's enough room for us to move around one another, and keep some space between us and somebody else, in a processing room, and then also a holding cell, a small room with some type of a locking door, that we can put somebody in while we're doing paperwork and while we're dealing with the processing procedure.
So what you're looking at right now is the footprint. It's showing the electrical room above, but this is the space
that we have right
that
now.
you have right now allotted just down below for both of those features. And if you, and then going to Heinsberg, the layout is you come in, there's a holding cell, there's a pass through in this wall, and then there's this entire processing space, which has room for the desk and the equipment. So it's quite a bit larger and more safe.
I thought that was one of the most helpful pieces of the site visit for me, is understanding, the space needed for processing. Which we're
And the
now
other
calling.
thing that was emphasized also, Ben, so that you can chime in, is the orientation to this directly off of the Sally Port, so that at no given moment is the person you are managing ever in an unsecure. They go from the Sally Port, which is secure, into the processing room, which is secure. They can't go out this door. They can't go out this door.
Right. Yeah, that's important to the fewer rooms that you have to walk them through, the better.
Yeah. So that was important for me to see.
And I'm assuming,
Is there a toilet
Mhm.
accessible from there?
Inside
There's
the
a-
holding cell.
They do have a toilet in the holding cell? Okay.
There was a sink and a toilet, and he did point out that you have to have the camera pointed at the person, but it can't show the toilet.
Right, that part of the video has to be blacked out.
The cameras are a whole nother thing.
Yeah, there's a
huge.
whole.
and what ends up happening if you have 2 people? Does that happen?
It certainly could. And what happens is we do the best we can.
Yeah,
Leave them in the car, maybe.
I can't remember what the chief, he said, they had a couple times where they had multiple people.
Well, they had
but I-
like 16, for, it was the protesters
Oh,
for
the
the
protest,
gas
yeah.
pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They probably weren't too unruly, but
No,
Oh no, those protesters.
those protesters, I think I know half of them. They're all
Yeah.
right here.
so
So
Ben, one of
I had this conversation earlier today. If we're in a situation where we have like 2, 3, 4 people in custody because there's been some major thing, we're not gonna be at our office anyway. We're gonna be at state police barracks because 2 of those people are gonna be in the custody of state police because they're gonna be the ones that come help us.
Yeah.
You know, and so, or if we had a building like this, maybe we would all go back to our building. But the point is, there's going to be more than just me involved for as far as law enforcement, and so we're going to have more resources.
Yeah.
So you think one holding cell is sufficient?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Yes, I think one holding cell is sufficient because I'm not, you know, I'm not going to have more than one person in custody by myself.
Mhm.
And so we'll, you know, and there may be times where you have 2, 3, 4 people in custody and you have to determine, okay, this person is the most violent or the most the one that's resisting the most, and that person goes in the holding cell and these other people aren't resisting as much. So we'll put one in the conference room and we'll put one, you know, in this other space. And that's just kind of what you have to do.
Yeah, what they said in Heinsberg is that, you know, the holding cell could be called a cooling off area. You know, they don't tend to keep people in the holding cell, you know, for very long, 15 minutes, you know,
Yeah.
until they calm down enough that they can pull them out and then do the desk work processing, fingerprinting and that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not like, you know,
Yeah.
the Mayberry, you know, drunk tank overnight thing.
What about occupants? Is the police station, is it going 24/7 or do we have hours? Do we shut it down?
How much time do you have? It's
I'm getting to energy here in my brain here.
Okay.
I think ideally we would someday like to be able to do 16 hours a day. 14 to 16 hours a day. When the police, my understanding is that when the police department was last at full staff with 5 people, somebody was on duty from 6 or 7 in the morning until sometime around midnight. And then somebody was on call for a few hours. And then that on-call person switched to whoever was coming in the next morning would be on call for a few hours before actually starting their shift.
But they're not necessarily in the building that whole time.
no.
Is that
No,
correct?
definitely not.
Yeah, I think Heinsberg said they've got a 7 to 3 shift and a 3 to 11 shift. You know, so as you say, Ben, 16 hours a day or so.
Right.
And what we have been assuming, since the police is a whole big issue in town, and we haven't figured it out. And we were hoping to do some strategic planning on police this year, but the assumption is that, you know, we're looking at 5 officers, full-time officers. And I think it is fair. I think you're right, Ben. I think it's fair to say 14 to 16 hours a day is what would be ideal.
And during the off period, 3rd shift would be shut down, doors locked, lights off, buildings closed up.
Yeah, you know, with, you know, cameras on and, you know, security, but
Sure.
And access to some kind of in Heinsberg, they have a phone that rings. If somebody shows up at the door, there's a phone in the vestibule that rings dispatch.
actually the Ring doorbell does that.
Oh,
So-
right, that's
so-
what they put in a Ring
I
doorbell.
went there the other day and nobody was there and I ring the doorbell. And the chief answers me from this car somewhere else. He goes, "Oh, hi, Jeff. You're there to pick up the plans? We'll have to do it another time." It was like really weird, but you know, the Ring thing cost him like $80.
Yeah.
And it worked fine.
Yeah. So Ben, I have an office question. I remembered. So you need a separate office for the chief and the deputy
Sure, Sergeant.
sergeant, that's what you call them, okay. And then you would have 3 officers that could have shared space, but they need their own desk and area. And then-
Ideally, yes.
Okay, and then do you need any space? Do you have part-timers?
So again, in an ideal world, there would be an office with a door for the chief, an office with a door for the sergeant, and then one room with 4 desks in it. One for each of the 3 full-time officers and one desk to be shared by all of the part-time officers.
And you don't have a receptionist, is that correct?
We have an administrative assistant that works 4 or 5 hours a day, 2 days a week.
So they would need a desk as well,
Yes.
Yeah.
in an entry space or something, yeah. Okay.
And while we're on that subject, for those of you who have been in our office, you know that when you come in from the main floor into our lobby, I guess you would call it, there's that counter, and Diane, she's our administrative assistant. Diane's desk is right there. It would be great if there was some kind of a partition, some kind of a glass barrier, because as it is right now, you could really, our whole office, you could just walk through the door, jump over that little half wall, and then have access to our whole office. So if there, whatever we end up with between the lobby and the administrative assistant person, some type of a partition.
Mhm.
I would put that in the need column, like that needs to happen.
And I kind of think that I really like the bulletproof glass across the front there, and then the pass through for like if they're putting through a piece of paper or something like that. And I was talking to Diane, and we have been trying to get that done for more than 20 years, and she still doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mm.
You know, so our police station was designed in, I believe it was the 1990s, Linda. We've only done one major renovation after it was a school, really.
Yeah.
It was like in the 1990s, and, you know, things were different. We had much smaller department at that time as
Yep.
well.
Mm.
And different coverage. So,
Mhm.
you know, now's the time to upgrade.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for Ben? You know, I can take you to Heinsberg if you'd like, Jake. You know, I found it informative.
I can send in that outline too.
Yeah.
Frankly, be more curious to see the building here, just what the current facility is.
Okay.
I'm not talking about building a whole new building. Would be interesting to see sort of how that's broken up now.
It's fair to say it's terrible. You know,
Yeah, I've never been in there either.
okay, so we should do that. So Ben, we should probably try to schedule a time when the committee can come in and take a look at your space.
At the existing Richmond office?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just let me know when you want to do it.
You'll be surprised at the staircase.
Yeah.
It's bizarro.
I will tell you that from February 6th to about February 17th, I won't be able to do it.
Okay. And so that's 4 days from now. So are you here anytime over the next 4 days?
I will be there all of the next, 3 days. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll be there.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. When it's completely cold.
Sunday, it's supposed to be 40.
There you go.
Come on in, we can shiver together.
Okay.
Actually, I take that back. If you come into our office, you'll probably be warm because the heat is the thing that works the best in our office. We have old computers and we have old technology and so forth, but boy, our heat is good.
There we go.
And I see Linda nodding her head.
Yeah, theirs is very good and mine is very bad.
Because everything goes
There's
there to
one
get
good
warm.
reason to start breaking some laws.
Okay, we're fix that.
right.
And Ben, is it okay with you? Is there any other staffing in the office, you know, during that time between the 6th and the 17th? Would it be okay with you? Set up with
Yeah,
some-
Allison will be around.
Okay,
Unless she gets a
We're-
call.
well, it could be a challenge to reach them, because you have to go through dispatch. You know, so I don't know.
I mean, after, I mean, I don't know if there's a huge rush, but after Ben gets back,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's
seems like a
fine.
good time
Yeah,
frame.
let's wait, yeah.
so why don't we throw around some dates and when we want to do that, because we might as well do it all as a group.
When we get back, when he gets back.
When you get back, so after the 17th, maybe then.
Okay.
Okay,
And I don't know if it would even make sense to do as part of this meeting schedule, or if that's a bad time for folks.
our meetings have been pretty full of late. In fact, we need to move on now.
Yeah,
So,
Maybe another
we can figure it out. We can figure it out. You know, I think it makes sense for us to do it with you, Ben. I think,
yeah.
you know,
I think
rather
so.
than
Yeah.
rather than do it with Josh or with Linda. Okay, anything else for Ben? Okay. Thank you so much, Ben. This is really helpful. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda is,
All right.
yeah, the library. So, Jake, for your benefits, one of the things, oh, wait a minute, we still have
Yeah.
you.
So I think John and I should just bring it
Okay.
a little bit full circle, to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yep.
So everything that we've heard between this site visit to Heinsberg and Ben just now, it really kind of aligns with the program that we've been working with up until now and the general square footage that we've been accounting for. Let me, this menu is in the way. Hold on a second. Okay. And so the next steps, and we've been in a little bit of a holding pattern until we had more clarity on the site survey to understand the implications of what an addition might look like, but we really kind of narrowed it down, and these are the binary kind of options that we've been playing with, is the idea of no addition, and based on your prioritization of town offices, police department, post office, and then tenants last.
Mhm.
This layout that begins to work with looking at the town offices in their existing location, because they need to be adjacent to the vault. And then developing the police department, which based on the program needs, would really need to be spanning 2 floors. And then compared to an option that's a more expanded program and working with doing an addition towards the north, and allowing for more program space on the upper floor to meet those tertiary priorities, I guess, the tenant space. The one thing that's not shown on here, which is also important to note, is no addition doesn't mean no addition. If you want a Sally port, there's no way to do a Sally port within your existing footprint.
Mhm.
So Sally port and then pretty quickly, and this is what we will be demonstrating, John and I will show in kind of initial plans at the next meeting, is the concept of what are the things that must be on grade because of the difficulties of a half floor elevation higher. If you only have a Sally port, there are still some potential hurdles of what that you're pulling someone out and then having to drag them upstairs, whether that's truly viable or not. So that's one thing that's on our radar, but we're going to start diving in and trying to hone these concepts into something that's a little bit that can be responded to in a more concrete and
One last question for you, Ben. So, how would you feel about, being on 2 floors? You know, is that workable?
It's workable. Having. So, boy. It would be beneficial to have all of the things that would be involved in dealing with somebody in custody on 1 floor.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I get that.
And then I guess on the other floor, that would be the second floor, could be the administrative assistant, the meeting and conference room, things like that. You know, the armory, the evidence room, the locker room, all of that stuff could go on the second floor. But as for like the patrol officer, the actual officers' room, offices, the processing room, holding cell, Sally port, all that should all be on one level.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay. That's hard for me to answer, not knowing what I mean, if we're talking like 80% of the things are gonna be on one floor and 20% of our space is gonna be on the second floor, or if it's 50-50, it would be easier to dish out what should be on what floor, but
Right.
We had
I
talked earlier.
I would not say that 2 floors is a hard no.
Okay,
Okay.
that's good to know.
Okay.
Okay, so Andrew and John, do you have everything you needed from this meeting?
I think so. I mean, I think we have enough to move ahead and have another fun and exciting evening with you guys.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I think we should probably move on for tonight because we.
Dave has a
Dave has a
question.
Oh, pardon me?
Hey, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wonder whether the Sally Port and the ground level police services could be added where on the post office side of the building, and whether the post office could be, the square footage could be made up by expanding that in that what I guess is, I get confused directionally, but with Richmond's orientation, but if we basically made an L-shaped post office and put the police on that side of the building, as opposed to putting a Sally Port towards the library.
It's interesting idea. I think we need the architects to show us some suggestions that we could see whether they were workable or not.
I think we had an early concept that started playing with something like that. I would have to look back. We haven't necessarily looked at some of those really original.
Why don't we delve into more of the details of design in our next meeting?
Yeah, I just the reason I suggest that or would entertain it is because it takes the police services Sally Port type of while I'm sure it could be aesthetically pleasing, it takes it away from the roadside vantage point and tucks it behind the building. So
it's an idea. It's more that side of the building. It's more has more floodplain issues, but we might be able to work around those. Is that something, John and Andrew? Is that something you can explore?
Of course.
Okay.
I would second Dave's response, like the thought of the Sally Port, the way it sticks out, like so close to the front. And like the whole purpose of it, and like being next to the library where like we talked about kids going back and forth, like that just doesn't seem appropriate to have that that sort of like central point of police activity to be right there where it would be sticking. So
It's close to the road. It's close.
Absolutely.
it's close to the
Bridge Street
road. It's
there, or, yeah.
right in the parking lot that we understand now. And granted, I know there's like landscaping that's going to be done and like some other things, but if you think about the kinds of activity and how people park there and then walk to the farmer's market, and it just doesn't seem like it's the right location and the way that the space is used.
Maybe there's a way to connect. The challenge is working around the ball. So if it's Linda needs to be where Linda is, but maybe there's a way to get from one end of the building to the other. I don't know.
This is the
Yeah,
fun part.
we're not gonna solve it thinking about it here. I can guarantee that. It's
Yeah.
that's not a simple one. So
Yeah.
anyway, so let us take a look at it when we're looking at the whole plan and can kind of shift the tiles a little bit. So,
Exactly. Thanks.
Okay,
all right.
okay, thanks. We should probably move on. We do have a few
Yeah.
more things.
All right. I'll see you guys.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
Bye, John.
Thanks for accommodating me remotely tonight. I appreciate it.
Worries. So Jay, our charge is for the town center campus, which includes the library. We've been dealing from the get-go of this committee with deferred maintenance over at the library.
I was involved with some of those.
Yeah.
discussions early on, yeah.
Still hasn't been addressed, Jake.
Ornament and that thing fallen and killed anyone yet?
No,
Um,
we've moved on to
different things. So the exterior shell of the building is and so some roof and steeple issues is what we've moved on to. And the
Yeah.
last estimate we had to repair all of that was like, what is 400?
439,000.
And we don't have that much money. So what we charged Jay Labare to do is to go back to the one bidder who bid on the project and to see if there were pieces of this that we could do that would fit within our budget. So Jay, do you want to explain what all that is?
Oh, there he is.
Yep.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jay.
Thank you for being patient.
Of course. Well, there's been no determination about what some of the priorities may be with the building and the exterior of the building. And we know that making it watertight and stopping any water migration into the structure is important. I think that's the front steps, which are an emergency egress, are important. I would hate to see anybody get hurt there. Yes, the front steps towards the road, towards Bridge Street. So, as I said in my email, I think the committee's charge is to decide really what direction they want to go in. And is there an appetite for doing any of that work this construction season, or kind of waiting to see how the grants pan out and do it next year?
So where are we on that? So the library, there's a whole bunch of money that went to the state libraries through both Pat Leahy.
$29 million through the Department of Libraries that's going to come to library projects, but they have no grant application, no guidelines, no rules yet.
Yeah.
They said in February they were going to have them. I don't know what that means.
And they also
What's the
said
timeline on that money?
The money, they want to do it, they want to grant it out by April so that you could spend it in this construction season.
Okay.
But they just found out they had this money, so what they say and what actually happens.
Who's it? I'm sorry, who's administering that?
This is the Vermont Department of Libraries. Part of it is coming through federal
State
ARPA.
agency?
State,
Okay.
state, the Vermont Department of Libraries.
Okay.
16.4 million is actually ARPA money.
Yeah.
And 10 million is a congressionally directed spending from Leahy.
Okay.
So it adds up to a big pot of money.
So
Do you have any sense on what the individual grants might be? No. Okay.
There's nothing.
So it's the
And the Bruin grant is open, and that's the up to $100,000, which we did not get last time. I was gonna reach out to Jenna and say, can you give us some guidance on why we didn't get it last time? Because they're usually willing to help you. Was it just the competition, or was there something missing in the application?
and sometimes I'd like to spread it around geographically too.
And we didn't have a real estimate for that last application. and
We do now.
So that's a big difference.
It's the one thing that makes us attractive is that we're pretty shovel ready.
Mhm.
know, so that's attractive to grant funders.
Yeah, but I do see. So Jay, you were suggesting that you
Did you bring up
spend
this
money
email?
on the front steps, right? What were the projects that you were suggesting for the 60,000?
I don't think I had anything definitive, Lori. Excuse me.
So just so you know, it's not $20,000 grant, it's $14,801.
Okay.
The maximum in that grant program was 20, but we didn't get 20.
I wonder how they came up with the $1.
14,801, I don't know. You suggested the front stairs and that's all you said.
Yeah, and again, I had thought that, Alex had thought something else when we were talking inside the library. And when we moseyed out and started walking around the building, there was a lot of pointing, and it really is not apparent what those projects should be. So it's what I thought might be a reasonable approach is for the committee or a portion of the committee to do a walkabout and look at what maybe could be accomplished. The other thing that I didn't know at the time we were doing our little walkabout is what the budget limit was. So it was a bit difficult trying to define a scope of work.
What's been challenging is that, you know, how much have we spent now in the library?
A lot.
There's a 300,000 anyways, you know, over the past couple of years on deferred maintenance, you know, out of the town center
HVAC
fund,
mold mitigation,
you know, the
HVAC in
HVAC and all
the
that.
second floor.
When it's,
Drinking fountain.
we've drawn down the town center fund quite a bit. We're down to about 250 or something, somewhere around there,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. You know, and this list of projects came up to 450, you know, so
Mhm.
we don't have an extra source of funds to do that.
So do we have $49,000 in that we could spend? That's what Jay is proposing here would mean 49-ish $1,000 from the town center fund.
So that's the question before us. Do we want to ask the select board
Right.
to
Or do we
release?
wanna postpone the whole
Or do
thing
we
for
want to
next-
postpone it? So
next year?
that's the question that we have.
Because I can request an extension from Caitlin on the grant,
Mhm.
and they've been granting them. Or we could use it not for the steeple, but for something else
Mhm.
on the building. That was her.
Do we
That's
want to
what she said.
defer this decision until we do a walk around?
So I'm concerned about it saying reduce water migration into the building. Do we have evidence of there being damage happening to the building right now? That's
We don't really
ongoing?
know. We know that there's lots of wood pieces that are not
There
there.
are holes in the
There
exterior.
are
of the
holes in
building.
the exterior of the building.
I think we do know that there is some damage
Still-
in the
Yeah.
spire.
In the what? I'm
In the
sorry.
sp-
Sorry, in the spires.
what's
Yeah.
spires? What's a spire?
The steeple.
The two steeples. Well, I don't know that we know there's, well, from the pictures, I'm assuming there is, but where it's going, it's not affecting the interior structure at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be, don't talk about how much money we want to spend or when we want to spend it until we have a really good assessment of what
Well,
the
we have an
condition
assessment.
is.
We have an assessment.
We don't have a prioritization though.
But I guess what I'm getting to the point around, does waiting another year make this even more expensive? Because that's what happens with buildings, right? If you don't address issues on the front end that are, like if there's water damage happening, we have infiltration somewhere, it's causing rot that's just spreading and spreading and spreading. Now we're rebuilding the
Mhm.
entire steeple, right? Like we don't want to do
Mhm.
that. So if it's a $50,000 fix this year or $150,000 fix the following year, then we probably would want to push to get it done this year. If it doesn't matter, and we know it doesn't matter, then I think it's just a matter of figuring out like what makes most sense from, you know, just
But
the
really-
larger project and coordination.
It's almost, we have an assessment from a contractor that basically said there's a lot of exterior rot. The window sills, the sill plate, where that, if that's letting water, we don't know if it's doing any damage because you can't see anything
Yeah.
inside. I mean, Jan Lewandowski was up in the steeple, and Adam actually was up in the steeple. We went up a little ways in the steeple, and there's no evidence of water coming in on the tall steeple anywhere. But the wood trim is definitely damaged, and I mean, we have drone footage, drone photos of the
I
steeple.
think what
and
we
the
don't,
wall.
what we don't have, we've got a lot of information, but what we don't have is we don't have a prioritization. You know,
And I
which,
don't feel competent to do that.
so Jay, how would we go about doing that? How would we go about prioritizing? You know, we could spend a little bit of money on the front steps, but is that the
I
most
think that's not the most important thing myself, but
urgent thing, you know, so,
yeah.
Well, there's a few things to think about. One is the cost of the work and if there's any additional mobilizations and remobilizations. And, you know, if any of this work that would be done potentially clashes with some of the work that has to be done in the future. So you need to be careful about, you know, where you draw the line. I think budget is also a consideration when you're prioritizing. That's I think probably the driving factor. If it weren't, we wouldn't be having the conversation.
Right.
So how much can we spend? And let's take a look at what can we do with that money.
Mhm.
The steeples or the spires are the most costly portion of the work, with the slate flashing and repairing the woodwork that would be involved.
Yep.
So
But I think the wood repair is gonna be way more than 60,000. And
The
you
what?
can't pay before you do the wood repair. So that sort of has an order, a natural order.
it seems to me, Jay, that your list there is a good list, 1, 2, 3. However, I think I'd reorder it. I would prioritize first, and then think about budget second. And the budget could be influenced by the potential for grant money.
But we're not gonna know about the grants until,
See, this was our problem last year, is that we put it out to bid. And
no bid.
we got no bids, and then we took a whole year, you know, going back and we put it out to bid again. We got one bid. And, you know, we're already late, you know, we would be lucky to get a contractor for this coming construction season.
Yeah.
Um,
So here's my proposal for what it's worth. Is that we do need to prioritize the work, but I'm not sure it's worth spending $50,000 or $60,000. Because there's no one item except for the front steps that's really gonna fit into $60,000. I mean, the windows restoration is more than that, I would say. That all those individual things, you can't do half of it, you know, one side of the building.
Mhm.
And then come back next year and do a side of the building. We tried that with painting, it doesn't work, believe me. I don't know, and then we would know about the grants.
so what's your proposal?
So I think we should not do anything this construction season.
I agree.
And ask and talk to Caitlin at the State Division of Historic Preservation where the grant is. But she already said they're having to put off grants because nobody can get
Yeah,
contractors,
nobody can
so.
get contractors.
you know.
I mean, are you experiencing that? Yeah, contractors,
Major.
yeah.
Yeah,
Major. It's a national problem.
Yeah.
It's not even just from us.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
I agree.
yeah.
I feel like we need to give the grant process some time to get sorted out.
Mhm.
We've spent a lot of money in the library and
Mm.
I think I'd be willing to recommend to the select board more money on the library, but not to the scale. And I feel like we've got to start thinking more strategically about, grants, philanthropy, other types of things to kind of take care of the
I'm feeling-
aging of
yeah.
these buildings.
Yeah.
That appears to be consensus to me. David, what do you think?
Well, I just wanted to test Lori's suggestion that we can't do what needs to be done in phases. In other words, do wood siding on one side of the building, and then move around to the next, and move around to the next, move around to the next. Because Jake's point of cost going up is a good point. One of the things is, one of those old saws is you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and I'm not, unless it's going to cost more in terms of mobilizations. I mean, I think if we can, if you need to reside the building, we don't have to do 4 sides at once. I mean, I don't in my house, I paint a side every year, but at any rate.
Yeah. So Dave.
So I just wanted to test that a little bit, Lori. Why couldn't we do woodwork on the worst side this summer, and then the next worst the following summer?
North side,
I guess my question is more about going to the select board for more money for the library
well, I mean,
right now. I don't know.
I think it depends, I mean, what we have been saying for all of the projects that we've been saying is that we're trying to address deferred maintenance. And if we don't address what we put off, is just going to be more expensive. And that's certainly true with the exterior of the building, but we can't do the whole thing. I can't see how we can do the whole thing. We don't know what it would cost to address the north side of the building. Right. So that one is not, that's not itemized out.
The north side is
Facing up towards Route 2, probably.
Yeah, the one that's facing,
the front side.
no, the one facing Main Street, the cemetery.
Oh,
Cemetery
that's
side.
in the best shape, actually.
Oh, is that the, I don't know, whatever side,
Yeah. Yeah.
one side of the building, So we should, I don't think we can make a decision tonight, Jay. What I would be willing to do is to do a walk around of the building and try to think about it.
Suggest maybe Dave. Would you be willing to walk around and,
Yep.
and thinking about phasing, put your phasing hat on and say, what do you think is reasonable?
Yeah.
We may have grant money this summer. We don't know
We don't
because
know.
of the library money. There could indeed be money this summer.
So Jay, do you think this is a reasonable thing to do, is to try to schedule a walk around and to try to come up with a prioritization of the way we sliced it and diced it for so far is what would it cost to do windows? What would it cost to do, it's not like, it's not like what would it cost to do this side? That's a different way to kind of slice and dice it. Does that sound okay to you, Jay?
It does, and there's no reason that it can't be phased, and it will cost a bit more. I don't think that in a year's time that library is going to be damaged, considerably more than it is now. So I don't think we're up against a hard timeline in that regard. So I think understanding what we're looking at and what the possible phases is a good approach. And I think once we do that, we can ask Alex to take a look at what we have for different pieces.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So How about if we just have a subcommittee do that? Laura, you look interested.
Yeah. I
I'm
can do that.
interested. David, would you be willing to do that as well?
Yes.
Okay. So Jay, maybe you could send around some dates or something, or, an email to us and see if
Yeah.
we could come.
Yep.
Hopefully when it's not, 30 below zero.
Yeah, not tomorrow.
Oh, that's what I was gonna suggest, Laura.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
forget it.
Can I
So-
do it? Carry your laptop
All
around?
right, it freeze.
Does the end of next week work for folks?
Uh,
I think I'm fine.
actually, it doesn't for
Depends
me.
on when, what day, but yeah,
It doesn't for me.
Tuesday morning, that's all I ask.
And I'm booked out from Friday through Tuesday of the following week. But you could do it without me. I actually do know the building pretty well.
Yeah.
I've walked around it a fair amount of times. So you could do it without me.
You want to send a couple dates
wanna
to
be a part of
David
that?
and I, Jay?
I'll
I
check.
will-
I think it would be helpful if you were there,
Who?
Alex, our potential contractor. Oh,
Yeah,
I was,
that would be terrific.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I'll see what his availability is and let you.
well, I was actually, I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
So I'm going to ask,
I have mixed feelings about that one, whether we should have our own discussions on our own without him there.
I
We
don't
can
know.
always have it after the walkabout.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask the indulgence of the committee. We're at time and we have a couple of more important issues.
You're
Oh, I'm
clicking
sorry.
your pen.
I'm sorry.
Okay, grant writing.
So if you'll indulge us, thank you, Jay. If you can set that up, that would be terrific.
I will. All set with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will sign off.
Thank you.
Okay, we've been talking a lot about grants and there are a ton of them out there. There's a lot of federal money still floating around. And while Lori has been excellent at writing grants, I haven't been too bad at it either, but
I
we
would
can't.
happily relinquish this.
Yes.
To someone.
So there happens to
paid.
be a program through the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board that will hire a consultant to do grant research and grant writing. Both Lori and I have come up with this same resource and I talked to her yesterday and she thought we'd make a great candidate. And it's a very simple application.
Yep, I saw it.
It doesn't require us to have any match. It's up to $7,500. The consultant that's at the top of the list, I talked to her earlier in the week and she's available. And they hire them right through VHCB, so it doesn't go through our procurement process necessarily.
Oh, so we get the grant and the grant hires them through
Yeah,
PHCD.
so the money doesn't
The
go
money
through us,
doesn't go through the town.
doesn't go through the town at all. The only thing that they require of the town is an email or a letter saying that you would accept this gift if they gave it to us. So
So they would pay for the consultant and basically assign them to us.
Mhm.
Oh, so we don't actually, there's no money coming in. Interesting. Okay.
There would be no
Um,
bills coming through the town. Is that correct?
that's my
Right,
understanding.
it's sort of like a in kind, I guess.
What
right?
it's an interesting,
We like compete for the services
no,
of the grant writer. I mean, in the grant application process,
they have a
select
pot of
projects
money and one of the
decide
things
who
that
can
they
do it.
realized is that municipalities in particular have a really hard time trying to figure out
Sure.
technical assistance,
Yeah, I'm
and
just trying to
for
think
lots of
how
things.
that fits into our,
The rule.
yeah, the
procurement?
grant procurement policy. Does the board need to approve that? How does that?
Feels like the select board would just have to approve it, but we might not have to go through the getting free bids and all that.
No, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, it's
I would think
essentially
they have
costing the town
They have
nothing.
to approve accepting the money.
Well, we're not accepting any money, though, that's the thing.
Right, we're accepting
accepting
We're
service.
accepting
Grant.
services, so I think still have the board approve it,
that's
knowing that we're. Yeah, it's a grant, but we're not really getting money, so I'll try to explain that.
Okay, what I can do is I can send information on the program that can be included in the
That'd
Yeah,
package.
they really don't ask you very much at all.
And she was very encouraging,
Mm-hmm.
on the phone. And she offered services beyond that, you know, so, like, an issue that that's gonna come up is windows. You know, there's a competing interest between energy efficiency and, replacement windows and restoring
Restoration
windows,
yes.
and historic preservation. She suggested she might be able to help convene, you know, a group of people together from the various different interests to talk it through. Which
Or is Ben, do you want to reach out to Ben? This is a side issue about the funders conference, or shall I?
I think
Or
Ben
we're
would be
gonna let
appropriate.
this person
Why don't we talk to this person
Okay.
first?
Mhm.
So if it's okay, with the committee, I can go to the select board on Monday and ask for, authorization to, accept this,
Sure.
these services.
Yeah,
Seems like a no-brainer.
Sounds
anyway.
good.
yeah,
So,
because there's grants for town center as well as library. It's not just library.
Yeah.
The library ones are clearer than the town center ones, actually.
yeah, well, but the town center also has a lot of different features that might,
Yeah.
appeal to a variety of different sources.
Yeah, okay. Good.
So, we actually have money in town. You know, we have ARPA money in town.
Yeah.
And the way the ARPA committee has been working is they've queried, the Recreation Committee and the Transportation Committee, to give them a, you know, what's your wish list? You know, what's your priorities? We've done actually quite a bit of community engagement, really kind of along the lines of what you instituted, Christine, with this committee. We've done a lot of community outreach to try to get, ideas, involvement. It's been quite interesting, you know, and we've gotten a lot of response. So over 300 responses and, over 500 different ideas, you know, but a lot of them grouped together. And that's why we talked to, the Transportation Committee. Sidewalks was a big piece of that. We talked to the Recreation Committee. The Recreation Committee is thinking about Volunteers Green. They've got a process that they're working tonight. I think they're meeting tonight or last night. I saw it on the agenda. Carol Bounty has found some student at UVM who's thinking about a redesign of Volunteers Green, which is interesting. And another thing that came up a lot from the survey work is town buildings, and particularly this building. So what would probably work best is an ask. You know, what do we ask for?
Yeah.
You know, we've got $1.2 million, you know, in ARPA funds, you know, and it's what our appetite is for it. And I'll make a proposal. Okay.
Yeah,
I would propose that we ask for $600,000 to $1 million for this building. It hits all of the bases for the criteria.
600,000, Bill Noah?
Yep.
Okay, you said 600.
I meant 600.
I was gonna say, whoa.
Broad range.
I'd go for the bottom.
What the ARPA committee has been working on is criteria. So how do you evaluate this? And we've come up with a list of like 10 things, but it fits all of the list. You know, it's a building that, it's a town resource that, it benefits everybody in town. It's a project that will last for a long time. So that's my proposal. I'm curious what others think about that. We kind of been leading up to this for.
How much do we have?
We have 1.2.
1.2. Okay.
I don't agree with that.
I think that's a lot of the ARPA funds.
Yeah, I think I think that there's some really important projects that the town could get done that, fit multiple projects, really fit within that 1.2. I definitely think we should ask for something. We should be thinking about that, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think it should be, see what we can do to scope something and to think about, I really think this is this incredibly historic time that we just lived through, and the funds came through to try to support communities around, being able to thrive and to come back and to invest in the community. Like what do we have in the building that we would want to have that represents that, right? Something that represents a place for people to be well. Like maybe it's, maybe it's that like we want to ensure safety or something. And so we have, because that was something that came up high on the list. And so we want to 200,000 to ensure that we're covering all required safety and security types of issues. Or I don't know, I'm just like throwing, that's probably not a good idea, but
Yeah.
I think it should be targeted toward a purpose that's aligned with the reason that the money was given to communities, and then what it is that we want to care, what the legacy is that we want to have created in the building for the next 50 to 100 years.
So where the ARPA committee has been going is in asking for the Transportation Committee and the Recreation Committee. The Transportation Committee only came up with one project that fit within the timeline. Timeline is the money needs to be obligated by 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. So the only the only sidewalk project that fits within that timeline, if we wanted to get matching money, if we didn't want to just, buy it ourselves, is the Bridge Street sidewalk.
The other side, on the library side.
It would go from Esplanade to the railroad on this side of the road.
Right.
That's the one, and our piece of that, if we got the transportation grant for it, they would pay for 80% of it. And our piece would be like 60-65. So that's the only piece that's the only thing that fits within the realm of transportation. What the Recreation Committee has asked for so far is a new playground equipment for Volunteers Green at about 200,000, and then a bunch of little things, park benches and picnic tables and a few other things. They came up with a list of about 250. So those right now are the only two specific things that have been brought up, is they had a dollar amount attached to it. Buildings did come up frequently, as did energy.
Were there specific things about buildings
Just like
anybody mentioned?
people did mention energy. They did mention energy for town buildings to save us money.
Yeah.
You know,
That's where when I saw this you put this on the agenda, I was thinking like Christine, well, could it pay for the HVAC, since that's sort of ARPA related, having good ventilation, having heat,
Yep.
I mean, I know that's hard to break out of a project and, but if we had a sense of what that might be, you could go with that number, or outfitting the technology for the select board room.
Right.
Or the technology for the whole building. I don't know, I was going in your direction with asking for
landscaping that would
some
create
amount of
community
money that
space
would
for
be
outdoor
for.
activities.
So here's
for-
the challenge with that, so we're a ways away from those
I know.
design decisions. The ARPA committee's been meeting for more than a year.
Mhm.
We're just getting to, we've kind of whittled down these 500 suggestions and grouped them, and we're going through criteria, and I could send you, and I'm just trying to find it. We only talked about criteria at our last meeting. And it's kind of the way our process has gone. First get as much as we could. Second, categorize it. Third, create criteria that to go through those and see which ones fit the most criteria. And that's been our process so far.
So you said that it has to be committed by when?
The end of 2024.
Okay, so we still got a lot of time, so we'll absolutely know exactly what it is we're gonna need.
But when's the deadline for them? That's when the money has to be obligated
Right.
to somebody, but when does the ARPA committee want to have the decision made?
We haven't determined that. There's been some pushback, June wanted to have it done by town meeting. Don't see it.
Yeah,
Um,
but we have to make our proposal soon because they want to decide.
I mean, maybe unless we go and talk to the committee and say, like, you have even another 18 months before you have to decide. Why force it? Why force like an artificial deadline so early if we can learn more through this
She wanted it
process?
done before she left.
yeah, it's not gonna happen.
I'm not sure I see a problem with throwing our hat in the ring
Oh, I
with the
do.
building. I
Yeah.
mean,
I just think
You know,
more, I was thinking 500,000. That was the number that was in my, not 1 million, of 1,000,002. I don't
yeah,
thing
I
that
don't feel
maybe.
comfortable asking for 1 million.
I guess the question is that I would have is, is the proposal accepted or declined, or is there some wheeling and dealing?
Or
that
do they
can
come back
happen?
and say, we'll give you less, can you? use it?"
Exactly, because we could use it, right? Like, we could put that to, it's not a matter of could it be put to good use in this building? I
Right.
think the answer is absolutely. We could spend
Yeah.
the whole thing
Yeah,
probably 5 to 8 times over, right? So it's
Yeah.
not. But I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you as well. So I don't know that we would want to ram it through in some way, but having. Like, we don't want the money to not get used, and that actually is a real possibility, right?
It is a
Like,
possibility at
yeah,
the moment.
so. Having this as sort of like the backstop of like, we've got this big, huge, gnarly project. We want to make this building that is a generational building. We don't want to just be putting things together with glue and duct tape here. We
Right.
want to build a beautiful, healthy building that's going to be around for another 200 years. And
Yeah.
so it's got great air quality and it's
yeah, it's safe and secure.
zero energy and is inexpensive to own and operate and all these wonderful things that we could do with this building. So I don't see that. I think that is a community resource, knowing there's always competing money, right? Like, Josh, you hear every day, all day, people have things they want money for, right? Like, it's not like there isn't people who
Right.
need money for stuff. But knowing that we've got a big project that could use it, seems like ask for whatever's left. Like, we
Well,
could definitely use
That, yeah.
600 to 1 million, I think is not an unreasonable number.
So we have a lot of really good committees in town, that are professional and do, hard work. And I would count this one as
Yeah.
one of them. Okay, the transportation is very professional. They have really good people working on that, and they're working with really complex projects. They take a long time to get through the entire process. The Recreation Committee might not be on that same level, and not to disparage them, but they're just not, we're thinking about benches and picnic tables,
And that's not gonna spend $1.2 million.
right, so, other competing projects that have been thought that have been, batted about, have been,
Cool.
a sidewalk going from the school up
Right.
past Southview.
The Valley
to
View.
Valley View,
Mhm.
which is not likely to be eligible for grant funds, and it could cost as much as $600,000.
Mhm.
In today's dollars, we had it on the capital plan for $1 million in 2035. And we decided not to put money in the capital plan towards $1 million project until we had voter approval on that.
Well, basketball and tennis courts. I've been wondering, like, we're the only town that doesn't have basketball.
Basketball court.
Basketball, tennis court, yeah.
Te-
Got lots of
tennis courts
space
have come
for
up.
it.
Where is the
I've
challenge?
heard the swimming pool multiple times for seniors.
And we have,
Floodplain.
we've addressed the swimming pool and
So I
there's-
don't think this committee is the ARPA committee though, so we
That's
could,
right.
we could sit here all night and
Yeah.
discuss. all the different
Okay,
ideas.
so
But we have to decide, and I don't think that I'm done.
We don't need to do- we
Very
don't need to
early,
do this tonight.
so I'm done.
no,
But I think Jeff, you're absolutely right. We have to come up with what our ask is
Yeah,
and
and a rationale for what
a rationale.
it is.
Yeah, and I mean, the library too, like the library could be.
The library could ask.
I mean,
money,
look at us, we're
yeah.
trying to figure out, like, well,
Yep.
we just said we don't have a budget. If budget wasn't a problem, like, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Okay, so why?
Let's- So maybe the discussion could happen after we do the walk around.
Yeah,
And look at the needs for both buildings and
maybe we could start getting some input from this consultant on, what grant sources might be available too.
yeah, if we can go, that would be good.
So I'm
And
sorry, this is
hopefully
so late in the agenda.
No. And maybe
it's- it's
by the end of February, it'll be clear of the library.
Yeah, it's a date, it's date.
Oh, David, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, quick thing or two. Appreciate what everybody has to say on this. One of the things that I've always wrestled with is what does it take to make this an energy efficient building versus a net zero building? And my personal view is that the ARPA money should have a long-term impact. And I feel very strongly about, as everybody or most people do, about climate change. And so if we can use the ARPA funds to mitigate our climate impact in town, I'm in favor of it. And I'm relative to this building, if we knew the delta between energy efficiency and net zero, for instance, which I somehow have in my head that it's like $1 million thereabouts. And then if we were to ask for half of, ARPA to fund half of that delta, we wouldn't be being greedy but we're also being forward thinking. So that's kind of tumbling around in my brain. But my questions are, I actually have a fear that our building is that we're not necessarily going to be spending money as much sense as it would make, and as hard as it is to imagine that we're not going to get our project done within that 2024 and 2026 or whatever those times might be. But I do have a little bit of a fear that Richmond's going to be slow on this town center building, that we'll get there eventually, but it's going to be a slower process. That it's going to be a slower process than we might hope. A, and B, Jeff, my question is, what happens if we get 200, 400, 500 of ARPA funds and then we're not able to spend it? Does the town lose that money, or can it be used for something else?
So the resource on ARPA funds is Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns, VLCT. They hired a woman, Katie Buckley, and that her sole job is to try to figure out ARPA, because we're not the only town that got this money. Every town in Vermont got this money. What she has told me, and what she advised the town to do, is to take it as revenue loss, I think is the term. We could claim it as revenue loss, get the money now, and figure it out later. Okay, and we chose to do that, and it removed a lot of strings. So there's very little restrictions on the money if you took it this way. So you can't use it on pensions. You can't use it to pay off an existing bond, or salaries or operating costs. The intent is this is once in a lifetime money. It's the intent is to spend it on legacy projects and frankly to relieve the damage that the pandemic did to individuals if we could figure out how to do that. Which is not so easy, another thing that comes up frequently is affordable housing.
But let's say we get X $100 earmarked for our project under whatever rationale, and then our project doesn't launch, but something else becomes shovel ready. Can the money shift over to a recreation project in 2 years from now?
Yeah, so,
A
well,
library project or some other project.
my understanding and what she has told me, I mean, we're not the only ones that have, okay.
Gotta go.
Thank
you.
We're not the only ones that are having trouble finding contractors for construction projects. And we're not the only one that has this money, right? It's not just towns, it's also schools. And I hear that the schools are backed up maybe beyond 2026. So I think it's the jury's out as far as how long we can stretch it past 2026, but I think it is possible. But it remains to be seen.
Then I feel like somewhere in the $500,000 neighborhood is reasonable ask for our project, and we can easily find a good reason to ask for that much money. But that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so the ARPA committee meets, on Wednesdays. And I think we meet next week. You're welcome to come, and Christine, I would particularly encourage you to come if you possibly can, to, express, this, your concern about, where else it should, we should be.
Yeah, I would love to. Unfortunately, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night of next week, I am booked. That's what my life is like right now.
Busy people. You
So-
could send an email though. That's what I did. with
I
my
absolutely,
suggestion.
I'm so curious. I'm so curious about this. I think, I think we need to start putting this together and
Yeah.
it would be helpful to.
Yeah.
Jeff, thank you for sharing some of the context of what has come in so far. It's kind of helpful to.
Mhm.
And we can bring
this.
this up. We don't have to do it at this next meeting, the next ARPA meeting. We
Mhm.
can discuss this further. I
Mhm.
wanted to get it on the table so you start
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah.
Well, and I do like Dave's suggestion about the energy.
Mhm.
That is a
Yeah.
long term. It affects the world beyond just the town center. and
Yeah.
the residents.
I just, it just would be nice, I think, to, I mean, granted, it's like a shell game, right? Like if we
Yeah.
get grants, we get all this money, it all goes in at one same pot. Same
It's on
pot,
the
and
same
we
budget.
can call
yeah,
it whatever we call it, but,
Yeah.
if there's intention behind the money to support a certain aspect of the building,
Yeah.
that's part of the story
Mm,
that becomes the history of the
Mhm.
project and the history of the building. And I don't know, I feel like there's an important part there that we're good stewards of and that we have to,
mhm.
that's sort of our responsibility to watch that.
Okay,
I'm a sentimentalist though, so.
Yeah.
okay. Long meeting. Thank you so much
Good.
for
Yeah.
saying,
Thank you.
why don't we put off approving the minutes and figuring out the next.
Oh, we could just approve the minutes.
I was gonna say, motion.
I moved to.
Okay,
Second.
sounds good. Approved. Okay.
I have the minutes from this.